Well, as everybody here knows, I'm Don Ray, and I like to wear a hat. Got to stand for my hat, but I thought we'd do it different this time. In case anybody really needs to put something in there, feel free to do that. And I'd like to welcome you out there and welcome my church from Unity of Greater Waco in Waco, Texas, with Margot Ford as our minister. Oh, an IOU. And everybody that joined us out there, including the crowd here, and I appreciate you coming and watching. This is my second time I get to do this, so I'll be done. Anyway, I'd like to welcome you to Fillmore Chapel. And we know that each of you are here today by divine appointment. No one is here by accident or coincidence. Each of us is an essential part of the energy that is unity at this moment. We come together to affirm and celebrate our unity, our oneness with each other. In that spirit of unity, let us pause and unfold in light and love all churches and all spiritual gatherings of every faith and denomination, meeting throughout our community and throughout our world. Unity is a spiritual movement based on the teachings of Jesus and the power of prayer in a unique, positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. In unity, we bless and embrace people of every ethnicity, culture, lifestyle, and creed. We honor and celebrate the many paths to God, the many names for God, and the many ways in which to experience God. Let us join together now in prayer. We open ourselves to love, to coming together in oneness. We allow the Spirit of God that is within each of us to spread out, to join. And we see the world in peace and in harmony. And we are grateful for this. We see the higher awareness of each individual we contact. We're grateful for this time of year. The flowers are starting to bloom. Everything's turning green. We see the beauty in the world. And we say thank you, God, for this. Amen. And I brought a special treat with me today. I brought my wife all the way from Texas just so she could read the Daily Word.
Okay, today our word is perspective. In the movie, Dead Poets Society, the teacher instructs his class to stand on their desk for a new perspective on life. Their surprise is apparent as they step up and take a fresh look at their familiar surroundings from this new vantage point. Similarly, a simple shift in my daily routine can open up a whole new perspective. Resolutions to problems and innovative ideas may come by changing my route to work or the order of my morning ritual. A small conscious change I make today may open a new window in my mind. I look at the same situation or environment with new eyes. With renewed perspective, I see and feel more expansively. My life is envisioned and enriched by a fresh perspective. And from Colossians, I practiced all morning, I'm sorry. Colossians 1:16, for in him all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible. And our affirmation for today is, my life is enlivened and enriched by a fresh perspective. Thank you.
Please stand and join.
Thank you, Chris. I'd like everybody to give him a round of applause. Chris Dawson. Give myself some breathing room here. We're going to start our story today about a little story. It was about a couple of ministers that were down in Louisiana, a couple of Cajuns. They were out in the country along this country highway, and on the left you had the First Baptist Church. I never have seen the Second Baptist Church, and I've looked a long time. Had the sign out front that said that on it. And then it said, presiding is Reverend Boudreaux. Right across, directly across the street, you had another sign, another church, and it said, the Independent Church of Christ. And the presiding minister there was Reverend Thibodeau. They were a little different, though. Actually, it's Thibodeau, but I'm from the north, I guess. And at the bottom of the sign, it says, after service every Sunday, we serve fried chicken. And it must have worked, because about a month later, over there on Boudreaux's sign, it said, after service, we have fried catfish. So one day, both ministers were out front digging a hole next to the highway, each on their own side of the road there, but digging away, working at it. Both started sticking a sign in the hole. Both signs said the same thing. Turn around before it's too late. The end is near. About this time, there was a road coming down, or a car coming down the highway. And he saw these two ministers out there putting these signs beside the road. Rolled his window down, slowed down, stuck his head out the window and says, you're both a couple of religious nuts. And they sped down the highway, and they looked at each other, and they watched him, and he went down, and he disappeared around the curve. And they heard a loud splash. They stood there a couple of minutes. Boudreaux finally looked over at Thibodeau and said, you know, maybe we should have just said the bridge is out. Yeah. That kind of leads us into between about the 12th and 18th century, there was an old saying that came about that said, the road to hell is led by good intentions. The two ministers had good intentions on what they were trying to do. They were just a little misdirected. We each have people in our lives that try to direct us. Some have good intentions for us. Some have good intentions for themselves. We just have to learn to kind of filter through all this, because you will have good friends. Our story today is about Lord of the Rings. I'm sure everybody's either heard about it, read one of the books, or seen one of the movies, but you should be familiar with it, I hope. And that story is about a ring. A beautiful ring, gold ring worth a lot. And it was forged thousands of years ago, down in the bottom earth, by a leader from the underworld named Sauron. And he wanted to take over the middle world where the elves, the hobbits, the midgets, and the humans lived. And he had this ring that he forged that gave him great power. And he started fighting a war. And they were winning. And it got up into the middle world, and he was taking over everything. And he got in this battle, got in a big sword fight, and his finger got cut off. He lost the ring. He lost his power. And then he lost the war. The ring was lost. First it was looked for, then it kind of became a legend, a myth, and was slowly forgotten. It was 2,500 years before it was found again by somebody named Gollum, who is the first individual we'll talk about today. He got the ring, and he felt the power in it. And he wanted this power, to give him power, to allow him to be better. And his whole life got focused on this ring and what it did for him. He thought he was getting power from the ring, and actually, he gave his power to the ring. And how we're going to look at this today is metaphysically. So we're going to try to look at it deeper to see what we can get out of this story to help us. So when we look at Gollum, we see that he gave up spirit for ego. He turned away from oneness. He turned into separateness, where he thought his life was driven by this ring and going out to take stuff. There was a limited supply, and he had to get what was his in order to be better. But doing this, one of the things the ring did was gave you an extremely long life. And he had the ring for 500 years. And over the years, by being focused on the ring, it drove him insane. Just completely destroyed him in his personality. And this is the first individual we're going to look at. This is somebody with a very low consciousness, focused on material things, away from spirit, and into separateness. Next, we're going to look at our next figure, which was Bilbo Baggins. He went on an adventure out in the woods, ran into Gollum, and to be honest with you, I don't remember how he did it. I think they had a contest or something, and he won the ring. But he got the ring, and he went back to the village, and he was a nice guy. And he didn't wear the ring or anything, just had it in his pocket. He felt a little sense of empowerment by it. But he was still a pretty nice guy overall. It didn't affect him. And he went about his life. One day he had a visitor who came to see him, a good friend he hadn't seen in a long time. And it was Gandalf the Grey, who was a wizard. And when Gandalf came to see him, the first thing he noticed, wow, he hasn't aged a day since the last time I saw him. And he hadn't seen him in quite a while. But he didn't think too much about it till they went to a party that the hobbits were having in their village. And during the party, at one time, Bilbo put the ring on and he disappeared, because that's one of the powers it had, and he went back to his home then. Gandalf knew what was going on then, and he went to his house and confronted him. He said, you know, I've seen some changes in you. Some changes, I don't think they're all good. And it's that ring that's changing your personality. Bilbo said, well, you know, yeah, I think you're right. I can see it kind of tugging on me and changing me a bit. And Gandalf told him, he says, you need to get rid of the ring. It's affecting who you are, what you are. And he said, well, I'm getting ready to go on a life adventure. And I think I ought to get rid of the ring before I do. I think you're right. So he got ready to leave on his adventure, and Gandalf said, you still have that ring in your pocket. Oh yeah, you're right. I got to get rid of this ring. Okay. So they sealed the ring in an envelope and put it on the mantle over the fireplace. And he got ready to leave, and he says, you know, I feel a buoyancy I haven't felt in a long time. I feel at peace. I feel love and happiness, joy. I'm going, this is probably going to be an adventure for the rest of my life. And I feel it's going to be loving. It's going to be peaceful. And he went on his way. So we look at this as our second character. He turned away from spirit to a point into the physical world, like a lot of us do. But he realized it, and he turned back into love, back into spirit, back into oneness, as we all have an opportunity to do, just to realize the truth of who we are. So he went on his way, and Gandalf went on his way. He had an errand to run. He went to see another friend of his, another wizard, Saruman. And they got to talking, and it came up about the ring, and he mentioned the ring to him. Saruman said, oh, we know about the ring. He said, Sauron in the underworld captured Gollum, tortured him, and found out who has the ring. And he was sending his henchmen, his trolls, orcs and whatnot, to demons to go get this ring. So Gandalf left immediately, went back to the Hobbit village, got a hold of Frodo, who was the heir, and told him, They're coming to get the ring. Frodo's the third person we're going to talk about. So Frodo was a younger person, very innocent, very pure. And one of the things that Gandalf did, because he did a little research on the ring, and he threw the ring into the fire. And then he took it out of the fire, and he told Frodo, take the ring and see if you can read something on it. And Frodo says, well, it's hot. And he says, it won't be hot. So he took the ring and he says, yeah, there's an inscription on it, but I can't read it. It's in a different language. And Gandalf told him, he says, there are very few people who can read this ring. If you can see what it says, you have a special ability. You're a keeper of the ring. You need to take the ring, and you need to leave immediately now, because they're coming to get it to empower them to try to take over the world again. You need to go on your way. So he left immediately, and he told him where to go and where he would join him. First, he had to go on a journey of his own and run an errand, and then he would join him, and they would go on to where the ring would be safe. So they both went on their way, and then we'll talk about Gandalf, who's our fourth person. And he went back to the other wizard, Saruman, to try to get him to turn around to help him with the ring and to turn to good. But what he didn't realize was Saruman wanted that ring for himself. He wanted that power for himself. He betrayed Gandalf. And there was a battle, and Gandalf was imprisoned, put on top of a tower, and he couldn't get off it because he didn't have his staff and his power. And he was stuck up there till a great eagle came and rescued him, took him off the tower so he could continue on his way. Because what Gandalf was a higher spirit. He was a wise person. And he had evolved, and what he did was help people. And they helped him back. And like the eagle, he had helped him in the past. It helped him now. Then he ran into another friend that gave him a great horse that helped him on his way so he could catch up with Frodo in his journey. So he caught up with him. They joined. And now he knew the ring had to be destroyed. And they needed to do it. So they continued on this journey together. Just like you're on your journey and you're challenged and you're tested. And when I say tested, I want to explain that a little bit. This isn't like traditional churches that say we're testing your faith in Christ or something. This is testing your faith and spirit and the truth of who you are. Because we're each challenged, we're each tested. That's how we grow, because we have free will. And part of free will is having to make choices. So as you go on your journey, you'll face sometimes small challenges, sometimes huge ones. But you will be tested in order so you can grow. That's just part of living. And they went and faced many challenges. They had the orcs and the trolls, and they met up with some other people that were helping them, and they were kind of tugged by the ring. But they faced many challenges until they got to a mountain range. And it was in the dead of winter, and they could not get over this mountain range because of the snow and the ice and the weather. And the only way forward was through the mines of Moria. They knew to enter these mines, they would face their biggest challenges. But they knew there was no other way, so they went into the mines. And they were faced by the orcs, by the trolls, and by the demons. And a big battle was going on, and they were being overcome, and it looked like they were going to lose. But in the middle of this, all of a sudden, the trolls and the orcs and everything disappeared back into the darkness. And they stood there saying, wow, what happened? This is good. And then they looked down the tunnel and they saw a light way down there. It's just kind of like a firelight glowing. And they stood there looking and watching. And pretty soon Gandalf realized. He said, run for your lives! And they all turned and headed down the tunnel as hard as they could go, and this thing's gaining on them. And they came to a large chamber. And as they entered the chamber, there was a big chasm, almost like a bottomless pit. And a narrow stone bridge went across it. And before they crossed it, Gandalf slowed down and told one of the others, he says, lead them across the bridge, through the mines, and on their way. And when he crossed the bridge, he stopped and turned around. And he faced the Balak, Balrog? Balrog, yeah. And he stood his ground, and the Balrog came. And the way we look at this is Gandalf faced his biggest challenge that we all can do. He faced his fears, he faced his doubts, his anger, resentment. Everything that separated him from spirit was there at that moment. And he faced Balrog, and they sparred. And finally, he took his staff and drove it into the bridge, and the bridge collapsed. And the Balrog fell, but as he fell, he reached up with his whip, and it wrapped around his legs and drug him over the edge too. So as they both fell, they continued fighting. And he kept fighting. And they fell into the lake, and then they ended up at the edge of the lake in the ice and the snow on a ledge. And the fight continued, and finally Gandalf overcame the Balrog, defeated him, destroyed him. But in doing so, he was mortally wounded himself, and he died. But later in the trilogy, he was resurrected and brought back to life. He was no longer Gandalf the Gray, he was now Gandalf the White. He had white robes, his beard had turned white, his hat was white. He was so white that he had a glow around him. This is like somebody else we know in history. Jesus faced his biggest challenge, just like Gandalf. And he went through it. And he knew what separated him from God, from spirit. And he let it go. He gave up his ego and became one with God, became the greatest he could. And like Jesus, he came back later in the trilogy to help people. We each have this ability. Just I know that me and the other people I know haven't quite come across to take that big a step yet. We're more like Frodo. Because Frodo continued on his journey and met many challenges. He had armies still to get past. He had an evil eye to get past, and he had to get to the volcano so he could destroy this ring to help try to save the world. And he was growing one step at a time as he was doing this. Finally, he made it to Mount Doom, which was the volcano, but he was so spent when he got there that he couldn't climb the mountain. And his best friend was with him and carried him up the mountain because he had his best intentions in mind. Just like some of you have great friends. And carried him up the mountain and into the cave so he could destroy the ring. And when this came about, the world started turning green again. People started smiling and joining each other. And there was love going around. They were turning back to spirit, getting away from the negative. And that's what we're trying to learn from this message. If we look in John chapter 10, it talks about the good shepherd and the gatekeeper. And let me read you that. Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in another way is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep know his voice. We each have this ability. We have this inner knowing, intuition, little voice. Just if you really turn within and use your Christ spirit, it will lead you to make the right choices as you make your journey. As you face your challenges, as you face your tests, you have that inner knowing to help you make the right decision to go on your way. That's what the gatekeeper is the Christ within you. That's also what the shepherd is that leads you down your path. Because wherever you are in your journey, you will be challenged, but you will make the right decisions. Just trust in yourself and your own abilities. Because we all have that knowing, and we all have God within us. It takes courage. The Mastercraft of Living by William L. Fisher says, courage may be said to be the foundation of all other virtues. So when you face a challenge, just have the courage to know that you can make the right choice and that you can make progress and learn and grow. It might not be like Gandalf all at once, but you can be like Frodo and take little steps. But each challenge allows you to be a better person, a better spirit, and closer to God. What I really want to leave you with today is a saying by Ralph Waldo Emerson. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you lived. This is to have succeeded. And this is what I hope for each of you and what I hope you carry from this message. Thank you. So let's take this time to go into meditation. Just find a comfortable position and relax in your seat. Allow your eyes to close. And take a deep breath. And as you exhale, just feel peace. And take us another slow, deep breath. And again, as you exhale, allow your cares and your worries just to float away. And as you breathe in love, the energy of God. And allow this love to flow throughout your body into every cell. For this is the truth of who you are. You have God's energy throughout every cell of your being. And just continue to breathe in and feel this energy. And allow any worry, any care just to flow away as you exhale. Feel that peace, that love, that wholeness. For you are the essence of health and well-being. This is your natural state. For right there at the core of your being, God is the truth of what you are. And so in some magnificent way, you are the principle of life. You are the essence of love and peace. So now let us just take a few moments in silence and be aware that that love, that life, and that peace is within you. And know the truth of that. as we prepare to come back to this moment, this time, just breathe deeply and know the truth that you are one with God. And this is your natural state. Open your eyes when you're ready and smile. And next week, we have Sandra Duncan. Beyond Second Chances. It'll be great. She's a great talker. And I'd like to thank the people who helped me today, because it takes more than one person to put this together. It takes the village. My coordinator was Gregory Starr. He's been pretty busy today. And I thank my wife for doing the daily word. Our lead chaplain was Sandra Duncan, and she had Teresa helping her, along with Judy Judy Marshall, excuse me. And then we had our Teresa, and I'm all screwed up, ain't I? Anyway, I like to thank all of them. I just embarrassed Gregory. And we'll have our prayer for protection. Probably a lot of you didn't know where this came from. It was from James Dillard Freeman, who wrote the original of the prayers of protection in World War II. And that's the version most used. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin carried it to the moon in 1969, and countless others have found great comfort from it. This prayer has been a great meaning to me, and I use it often. So if you would, let's all say it together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God folds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And then we have the chicken slide. Because like the Cajuns, after every service, we have fried chicken. So if you would all now join me and we'll sing the peace song. And let the church go forth knowing that you're on the right path and God is always with you. Amen. Amen.